Hey, everybody. Welcome back. We're here to talk about episode 8 of WandaVision, previously on. I'm your host, Maui. And joining me, as they join me every week, are Eric. Eric, how you doing, Eric?
I'm all right.
Good to see you. Good to see you. And Thomas. Thomas, how you doing?
WandaVision. I'm so excited, guys.
I don't like the color setup here with red, then black, red. So we're just going to do this. There we go.
Yeah. Hey, yeah, that's good.
All right. So here we are at our penultimate episode of WandaVision, or as I like to call it, WandaVision.
With Eric, the joke
side eye.
This is a really good episode. People are freaking out online saying like this is the best episode. I don't know that I would call this the best episode by far.
You know what? I'm so glad we all kind of agree with it because I was about to walk in and be like, "This is my least favorite episode in a while."
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty much exposition dump. It's just like here's all the stuff you need to know before going into the final episode.
Yep. And I was like, we could have done this throughout the series in a much more interesting fashion than walking through doors and besides doing A Christmas Carol. Like we could have, we could have done this in so many other interesting ways. Not that the information we got isn't interesting and fun. Like the scenes we saw were very cool, but we could have been seeing them throughout the entire series. And this episode have us like make sense of all of it versus seeing it and making sense of it in 38 minutes. And we really don't advance. We don't advance the plot. We just unveil it.
Right.
Yeah.
So while I really enjoy the information they gave us, I'm like, it's an okay episode, I guess. I don't hate it, but it's nothing special. What about you, Eric? What do you think?
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. I did enjoy it. But like you guys were saying, it was a lot of exposition and a lot of it sort of, it's things that like we either knew already or it kind of pieced together. It's just kind of confirming things. There wasn't a lot of completely new information. In these flashbacks. There was some, but like it wasn't like the mind-blowing revelation that I think like it was being built up as.
Yeah.
Expected. Like I really don't think the show was setting it up for this episode to be a big like I think we as fans maybe kind of wanted it. But like I think if we look back, we aren't gonna go like, they were really hinting at X, Y, and Z. And
I would rather have like an episode where I like that opening sequence, like just give me like a bunch of Agatha backstory and then how she intersected into this and then what she's been doing throughout the course of the show, similar to the Monica Rambeau episode, which I really love. Yeah,
like that would have been a little more interesting. We still have the issue of it being a like retro episode.
Right.
Which are not necessarily always my favorite. 4 kind of got a pass because it was like episode 4, I think, breaks the mold in the sense that like we are watching the real world now, whereas we were in Westview and we're seeing things we've already seen before, but from the other side. Versus this is like we're going all the way back to when she's like 8, 9. We're seeing pre-Ultron stuff. Like we're going way back.
And you hear this off screen, and then you heard the cat like
background noises here. I can mute this.
But then you saw Eric just go like.
But yeah, I really did like the Agatha stuff, and I would like to know more about Agatha within the world of the MCU because I don't know, and Eric will probably be able to speak to this. That they're so far are we living in the world of Agatha's like backstory? I don't know how much you know about her. But I know
only
you know
a little. Like I suppose I could look her up on the wiki and refresh my memory and whatnot.
We'll look at Eric. Why don't you pull up that, and so then when we get to talking strictly about Agatha, then we can maybe like get some information from there. Because I don't know that the representation of her in this is necessarily what they do in the comics. I've seen her be kind of on both sides of the fence.
I was just going to say that, like, sort of building off of what Thomas was saying, that was kind of my big disappointment with this episode. After last episode, we got this huge revelation of like, oh, it's Agatha. She's been behind everything, and it was Agatha all along, as the catchy ditty says.
Mm-hmm.
And then this episode, we got like a little bit of Agatha's story, but then we still don't know everything or why she's involved with this exactly.
Right.
So like that was kind of my disappointment, that I was expecting to get a lot more info about Agatha and not things about Wanda that I already knew or had kind of figured out over the course of the show.
Same. So let's go back to the top, and we'll go through the beats of the episode. Even though this is the longest episode, I think there's really only a few different set piece scenes because of the structure of this. So I think we'll actually be able to get through this fairly quickly, and then we'll get back to the more in-depth conversation. So opening sequence, we pick up right where we left off. No, actually, I take that back. Opening sequence, we get our flashback to the origins of Agatha Harkness. We go see her in the 1600s in Salem, Massachusetts, and I feel like they did like a red herring, even with micro red herring within that scene where she's at the stake, and you're like, oh, this is going to be like some dudes like trying to burn her for being a witch, but it's actually her
own coven.
Her own coven, right? Also, my mother is saying, did Eric not get the memo on the color shirts tonight?
I mean, I got some red on here at least.
Yeah, there's some red on there, Ma.
Merchandise. You know what I mean? He's really repping the brand, I think. Mine is just a red shirt.
Yeah, like every episode I've had one of my Marvel shirts on. Like I'm working with what I have. I don't think I've got one that's
I need to get more. I think I'll
red color.
I think I'll purchase an actual like WandaVision shirt for next week so that we have
There you go. Oh, maybe I should do that too. Could start a Scarlet Witch shirt. So we see this origin story of Agatha. We apparently she has been dipping into the darkest magics, and tapping into stuff that is beyond her age and station, is what the head witch says, which we find out as they are zapping her with magic. I don't know if they're trying to kill her or strip her of her power. I don't know what exactly that is, but then she cries out to her mother, so this is apparently her mom, who has sentenced her to whatever the fate is that was supposed to happen to her, but instead she ends up sucking the life force out of all of the coven of witches, including her mother. And I will say there's a moment where when the mom really tries to go at her, where the Scarlet Witch helm energy forms, which was really cool. And then she kills the entire coven. Eric, what did you think of this opening sequence?
Oh, I thought it was very intriguing. Like I was saying, I was really hoping for more information about Agatha in this episode. So I was really intrigued when it first started. Got quite confused when energy was coming off of the hands of the person tying her up. I was like, wait, what? And then, the reversal was very clever. I thought that was cool, that it was the witches putting her on trial. But at the same time, though, I was a little disappointed by the way this all played out, because we got some tantalizing glimpses of Agatha's backstory, but not really a lot of solid information, because we didn't even know what they were trying to do to her. Were they killing her? Were they trying to banish her to another dimension? Were they stripping her of her powers? Nothing was explained about what her punishment was exactly. So it was all kind of very vague to me.
Yeah, I agree. I felt exactly the same. You said it perfectly. Thomas, you got anything to add on to that?
No, just that I'm not entirely sure that it's necessarily a problem. I think because Agatha's such a new character for the MCU and for most of if anybody's just a mainline MCU fan, this is now the introduction of magic from a witch's perspective versus from the sorcery perspective of Doctor Strange. And we kind of talked about that, I think, a couple episodes ago, about the way magic is being used in the MCU and how it's these cosmic forces, or it's just the way to do it. Agatha needed spell names, right? And which I think is very cool. So do I want more Agatha information? Absolutely. But I really did like this opening sequence. because one thing I think is very intriguing is we didn't really get whether Agatha was malicious or not. Like, I don't, like, that question wasn't answered, and that question to me is intriguing.
Yeah. I think the two of you summed that up perfectly. I think it'll be interesting to see if we glean any more information in this final episode. Hopefully this is not the last we see of Agatha Harkness. I think that she has become quickly a fan favorite, so hopefully she pops back up in the MCU and we learn more about her through subsequent appearances. I also think that just from the way that she was describing like the runes and probability hexes, it seems like it's a similar school of magic to how Doctor Strange uses magic. All the studying, like, she's been doing this for hundreds of years and she can only do a fraction of what Wanda can do, right? Because Wanda tapped into like the cosmic energies of the universe, which we'll get into later. But so I think I think there are some things to be gleaned and perhaps inferred, but I like a little bit more definitive answers being so close to the end of the season. So, Agatha. So then we go back to present day. We're right where we left off in the previous episode. She is, she has Wanda captured. Wanda tries to get in her head. She says, "Oh, honey, you've never been able to get in my head." And we find out that, she's trying to figure out how Wanda can do what she can do. She almost seems like shocked. She's like, "How do you not even know the fundamentals of how to manipulate magic?" And she's
how to be a witch specifically, which is like not language that Wanda is used to, and the audience is not used to being used to describe Wanda, which is very fun. We all, colloquially call her Scarlet Witch. But like, I'd have to go back and look at some of the credits. Like, I don't know if she's ever been characterized as the Scarlet Witch before.
She hasn't. I was
never once. They even put a hat on that in an earlier episode.
They did, yeah.
When he's like, "What, she didn't have any funny, any funny nicknames or anything like that?" Like a few episodes back, like they even put a hat on that. They're like, "Look at this. This is important. She doesn't have any name," so that at the end of this episode, they could really like drive that home. And
in that previous episode, I remember being a little disappointed by that because as a fan, we're also used to calling her the Scarlet Witch, and that just kind of reminded me, like, no, they never really used that name at all in the movies.
Yeah. Agatha's like, how are you doing this? Kind of solidifying that even though the previous episode told us it was Agatha all along, that Agatha is actually just trying to figure out how Wanda was able to create this. So Wanda did create this world. I think all the textual evidence is telling us that at this point. I don't know that that's up for debate anymore. But Agatha is trying to figure out how to tap into this power that Wanda has. And she tosses her around a little bit, says, "Okay, fine, we'll force you to," and then we go into these series of flashbacks. So, this Agatha, back to the second half of the Agatha All Along sequence. Thomas, what did you think about this sequence?
I thought it makes Agatha's character even more interesting because it's not a malicious overlordy kind of character being like, "I was controlling you the whole time." It's somebody who goes, "I'm curious. I'm simply curious." And, we don't know if Agatha was already in New Jersey when it happened. We don't know if she like sensed it, or maybe she does say that. Doesn't she say she like sensed this thing of power and like made her way here? If I remember.
Yeah, I don't
recall.
So. Yeah, I think so.
I think she like sensed this great thing of power and came and is just interested because Agatha's been around since the 1600s, so I think she was probably aware of the Scarlet Witch or of Wanda on a Avenger level, seeing things that I'm sure she pays attention to the news and was sort of interested. Like, oh, that looks like magic, but she's just doing baby stuff, and now it's like somebody dropped a nuclear bomb of magic, and I've got to figure out what this is. Because something tells me maybe Agatha's one of our few witches on Earth at this point. If she kills her entire coven, maybe there aren't that many. Maybe it's just Wanda and Agatha, which is going to be an interesting dynamic, knowing what we know in the comics that Agatha tended to be a mentor to the Scarlet Witch, and behind a lot of some of the major decisions that Scarlet Witch makes in the comic books were spurred by Agatha or Agatha's ghost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's interesting. Yeah, I really do hope that this character stays around in the universe. I could see her taking on, kind of a similar role to like Madam Web in the comics.
Yeah.
I would love to see her pop up in Spider-Man, for example.
Sure.
Which he's trying, which, by the way, and we'll talk about this after we're done talking about WandaVision. Maybe we'll talk about. There's been a couple like big reveals in the news in the last few days that we should touch on briefly. So we'll maybe talk about the Spider-Man title and that whiteboard of possible titles. I feel like they're hinting at certain things, but we'll get into that later. So we go into our series of flashbacks. Our first flashback is Sokovia. And this gives us an answer, something that I was speculating on for a long time, on why we're in the various sitcoms. We find out that growing up, Wanda's father was selling, American, DVDs of American television shows to get money to feed his family. And there we see him. We see the Dick Van Dyke Show. We see
Bewitched, I Love
Lucy, Malcolm in the Middle, all the things that have inspired these episodes, which I love. But we see all of them except for the Dick Van Dyke Show, and that's in the special place. Loving family, trying to keep their kids from the horror that's just right outside the window by escaping into these idyllic American sitcoms. And Wanda's favorite by far is the Dick Van Dyke Show. And the Walnut episode, which is one of the most classic episodes of American television in history. When I was a kid, all I was allowed to watch was Nick at Night. And that episode is one of my favorite things ever. It is
you can
so
only watch
good.
TV like past 7 o'clock.
I was only allowed to watch Nick at Night, like that era of shows.
Oh, okay. I thought
I wasn't allowed to watch
Nick at Night.
Right, I wasn't allowed to watch like current stuff. I didn't really watch too much current stuff until I got a lot older. This is mostly when I was living with my grandmother in California. She didn't care for modern secular television. Thought it was too
racy.
Evil, too racy, too much of the devil. And so I was raised on like Wanda, I'm like watching, old ass TV shows, Adventures of Dobie Gillis, stuff like that. Also, my mom just loved classic TV as well. So even when I was with my mom, we would watch old movies, old TV shows, things like that. So I very much like feel that, but all comes crashing to a halt when a bomb goes off, and that was so jarring the way they did that. Bomb goes off and just destroys their place, kills their parents instantly. This is the moment that we've heard them talk about, but we've never actually seen in the MCU. And then there they are sitting under the bed, all sad and scared. At this point, Agatha realizes, we see like Wanda reach out. And then Agatha's like,
we should mention what it says on the side of the bomb.
Oh, right. The Stark Industries and the blinking red light. It's like, oh, this is the toaster commercial. Right. Mm-hmm. And it's going to go off. And then she puts her hand out and it just keeps beeping, but it never goes off. And then that's when Agatha says, oh, you used a probability hex. And she's like, no, I didn't. We just sat under the bed and it never went off. It was like, she's like, how long were you under the bed for? She's like, 2 days. And like, obviously she's like, okay, this kid knew how to, didn't even know that she was doing magic, which I thought was very interesting. Eric, what did you think of that sequence? No, I'm asking you, what do you think of that sequence?
Yeah, I was about to say, like, that was extremely interesting to me because this is the first indication that we've gotten that Wanda had powers before Hydra experimented on her. Like, that the magic is coming from her and not necessarily from the Infinity Stone that they exposed her to.
Yep, absolutely. Any other thoughts on that sequence, Eric?
Oh, just the whole thing. It was just very well done, I thought. Like you had said, we had heard about this happening, but we hadn't seen it actually play out. And so, like, it was very moving, I thought, to see them all as a family and what they had to deal with in this war-torn country. And like you said, the explosion was such a jarring transition. Like I thought, like the screen had just gone black for a second. I was like, "Wait, what? What happened?" I was like, "Oh, no, no." So it was very well done. I thought the way they did it, because it even though I knew what was going to happen, it still caught me by surprise.
Thomas, anything to add on that sequence?
No, I don't think so. Although Catherine Hahn just killing it with the like, does he have to be so loud? We're right here. We're right here. Like just some great commentary on a scene. Although in loving I do like the Wanda being actively a part of remembering versus it being like a full Christmas Carol thing where she's completely on the outside and just watching it happen. Making her relive it is going to be is a little more like trauma therapy than just talking about it or thinking about it.
100% agree.
Yeah.
And even like when she's like, "Honey, you're on." Like, yeah. Catherine Hahn chews the scenery so well. Like she is one of the highlights of this entire series. Oh,
I'm not surprised she didn't have like a bag of popcorn in one of these scenes. Like that to me seems very much what that character would do. And I'd be along for the ride.
Oh, I'd be here for it. We then go into our next flashback sequence. Our next flashback sequence is back at Hydra, where we first meet her in the post-credit sequence of which film?
I believe it was The Winter Soldier, wasn't it?
It was The Winter Soldier, yeah.
Well played.
Captain America, The Winter Soldier.
There you go. Yes, that is correct. I tested you. You passed. And we see her being they put her in the same room as the Loki Pokey stick, and
around.
Yes. And she approaches it. This is their experiment of exposing people to the Infinity Stone for reasons, just to see what happens. And the whole thing explodes. You see the Mind Stone within that blue casing, which I never understood why it was blue at first, and then like, oh no, it's in an even smaller thing, and it's actually yellow.
That's because prior to Avengers, or maybe even prior to Winter, or what's the next, or Iron Man 3, I don't know. But prior to Feige really taking over the whole MCU, Whedon just wrote it as a scepter with the ability to control minds. The Mind Stone was not in the scepter until he wrote Ultron.
So that's a retcon.
Yeah, it's a retcon. Okay. So like, and the Tesseract was not the Space Stone. It was the Tesseract, which, as comic fans know, are two separate, or it was the Cosmic Cube.
Cosmic Cube.
Which are two separate entities within the comic books. But to make the stone line work in the MCU, they had to smash them together, which works.
Yeah. It works.
And then all of the Infinity Stones
movies together
in some sort of other form, except for the Time Stone. It just lives in the Eye of Agamotto as itself, right? But so that's why it's the blue shell inside being the Mind Stone.
Okay, thank you for that. I never knew that. But we see it like shatter open, and she sees and bathes in the power of the Mind Stone, and then we see an image of the Scarlet Witch, of like it's the silhouette, the very distinctive silhouette of the Scarlet Witch, as far as I can tell.
That's
correct me if
like to me too.
Yeah, of her classic costume, like what she was wearing in the Halloween episode.
Well, it looks like a little bit of a combination.
Well, yeah, I mean, not exactly, because we couldn't see it precisely.
Yeah. The way it like hugs hugs her waist, it looks a lot like a combination of a cape, or maybe it is the like duster like she wears in Ultron and at the end of Ultron specifically. But we do clearly get the horn motif.
Very interesting.
And the arm position. I think of the flashbacks, this is my favorite of them, because I lived for the like power, science-y, magic-y stuff within the MCU. So I really love seeing the like, whoa.
Oh, this. I like this one. This is not my favorite. I'll let you know when we get to my favorite.
I found it really, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I found it really intriguing when we saw that silhouette because I now don't want to know what that means. Like, was she seeing a vision of her future self? Is this a previous Scarlet Witch? Like,
based
from
on
the past? That's like
based on what Agatha says.
Power to her?
Based on what Agatha says at the end of the episode, I'm beginning to think that the idea of the Scarlet Witch, they're going for more of a like Phoenix Force idea, like a witch can become the Scarlet Witch.
Mm-hmm.
But it only,
from what I've heard,
rarely is the idea that I'm getting just from the MCU stuff. I have no idea what that means in the comic books.
Well, I was going to say, I have not read this particular story myself, but I have heard that they've been playing that idea up more in recent comics, that the Scarlet Witch is a title and that other people have had it in the past.
Sure.
So I think those are
which definitely is in line with the end of this episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is an interesting episode. The other interesting thing about this, I'll say before we move on to the next scene, is that when you see the scientists trying to watch the replay, that the feed has been manipulated. I guess, Wanda subconsciously did that, or maybe whoever that was that passed on this Scarlet Witch powers to her, because I'm wondering, like, was that her seeing herself, or is that the previous Scarlet Witch kind of like, or whatever the force of the Scarlet Witch is, like passing into her and cut the feed so that they would not know and be able to, utilize and try and mine that power.
My thought was just that like there was so much energy or cosmic stuff that a janky like Cold War era camera, which means that camera is from like 30 years previous, just like doesn't have the technology to capture it.
That's definitely possible, yeah.
Could be. However, in that case, there would be that amount of time of static, right? But it is a quick cut. Like there's no information there.
In that
there would
case,
still be that same information.
I think it's just like time manipulation. Like they watched it in real time and they were there, but like, if something else that's not a living being witnessed it, like it's just like it never happened.
Right. Maybe what she experienced, for anyone else to observe it, is just her just passing out. But what she actually experienced was something that took place a lot longer. Could be. Yeah, that's an interesting thing. I doubt that we'll ever get an answer to that, but it's an interesting thing to think about. So then that's when Agatha tells us, so the power that you had that would have died on the vine was amplified by an Infinity Stone. So that's very interesting as well. We move on to our next sequence, which is my favorite sequence. And this is at Avengers HQ. And this is right after she's lost Pietro. And one of her first encounters with, Vision, like one-on-one encounters with Vision. And it's just the sweetest scene. This made me cry. And she's talking about her grief and how sad she is, and how and she's watching Malcolm in the Middle at the time, and we get to see the great Bryan Cranston for a split second.
I thought it was interesting that in each of the flashbacks she's watching a different sitcom, and I believe I'd have to go back and watch the episode again, but I think it tied in with the era of each episode of WandaVision for the different sitcom realities that we saw.
We like one because we don't have a black and white 60s one. Because we do the Dick Van Dyke, and then we don't have a black and white 60s one because the next one that we see is the Brady Bunch, and they're in color.
Oh, true, yeah.
Right.
And then the next one we see is Malcolm in the Middle. So we only see 3 of the like 5 eras.
It was definitely going in the like chronological progression, at least.
Yes. Yeah, 100%. I think you're correct in that, and I think there's an interesting alignment there. We'll have to dig into that a little bit more. But then she starts talking about how like nothing's gonna make it better except for like if she could have her brother back, and then she starts talking about this grief and like chef's kiss. Like this is my favorite scene in the episode, and when like the way she describes the grief about like and then the weight of it, and she tries to get up and it just knocks her back down. It's just heartbreaking. And then Vision says what is my favorite line in the entire series. It might be my favorite line in any MCU anything ever. When he's talking about his POV and how he's never had anything to lose. He's never had anyone to love. And then marvels at her grief and says, "What is grief if not love persevering?" Yeah. Like that made me cry. Like that brought me to tears.
I was pretty close to that as well. Yeah, having experienced recent loss in my life, I was like, "Oh, my heart, my heart." Yeah, and that line, it spoke to me as well. I agree with you on that, Maui.
Yeah. Oh, it's such a well-written line, and Paul Bettany delivers it just perfectly.
Yeah, his like bumbling professor, like I have no idea what the world is like, but you also see that like he's dealing with human emotions in this moment because he so desperately wants to help her and has absolutely no idea how to, even though he's got the world's repository of knowledge at his fingertips. And I think they both really just act the crap out of that scene. I also love seeing Vision in clothes. It's always funny to me. It's also like completely unnecessary.
Yes.
Like it's very unnecessary because I don't know, I don't think we've ever seen him like shift from an outfit to an outfit. So to me, it looks like he goes into his regular body and then like physically puts on pants and a sweater, which I just think it's a very amusing image to me.
Yeah. But like everything about this scene is just amazing. And then here comes Agatha to like kind of shatter the glass again. And she's like, all right, so everybody's dead in your life. And it's just like, oh my God, like, come on. Like, and she's just like, but I need to know more. Like, she's starting to put the pieces together, but she needs to know more.
Yeah, she says, I have a theory, but I need to know more. And I was like, or you could just like tell us your theory. Like, that's what theories are for. Oh, fine. Okay, we'll do another one.
And she does, and Wanda just doesn't want to do it. She's like, I don't want to do this anymore. And she's like, no, you're so close. Like, you're so close. And it's just like, oh, like it's so mean to make her like relive this stuff yet again.
But we all know, like, sometimes that's the only way you can heal. Is to process it and not ignore it. And I think really the WandaVision is doing a great job of tackling the ideas around grief. And around depression and around like the actual repressed memories, because there was that whole like craze in the 80s where everybody thought repressed memories were everything, and it's really not.
It's the best depiction I would say since Jessica Jones.
Sure, yeah, and because Marvel is not necessarily known for their delicate handling of mental health, but I think sometimes they just like don't have it. You know what I mean? Like we've never had Jessica Jones is one of them. We kind of got it in Iron Man with his PTSD, but it was sort of, I think it was a little played for a little more of a laugh toward the end because of the post scene with Banner. But Jessica Jones and now main canon, main story MCU, we have a character who's battling with depression and grief, which are very real for so many of their audience. And Elizabeth Olsen, I think, is such a beloved actor or an actor now to sort of have a face on that is really nice.
Yeah, and it's funny because like even as I say, and I still maintain that I think that this is narratively one of the weaker episodes. This is probably my favorite episodes in terms of acting performances.
Oh yeah, she was doing a fantastic job in this episode.
Yeah. Like this is the episode where they earn their Emmys. Like they better win some friggin' Emmys on that.
I don't know, guys. I just don't think the Academy. I just don't think not the Academy. That's movies. I just don't think they're gonna give it to the sci-fi action comedy. Like I just don't think it's gonna happen.
Yeah, probably
I'd
not.
love to be proven wrong.
Yeah.
Like, I would absolutely love to be proven wrong, but I just don't think. I just think the old gray hairs behind the Emmys are just going to be like, "Hey, it's for the kids," like, and just leave it.
This is what I love though about genre, right? Is that these heightened situations really let you just dig really deep when you're doing it right. It's like such a wonderful vehicle to really dig into character and what makes a person tick, and how they process trauma and how that informs the way they interact with the world. Seeing it on this heightened level, you get so many beautiful stories can be told out of that, and it reminded me of why I love Lost so much, especially the early season, especially season 1. Right, season 1 is like a perfect season of television. Like the first season of Lost is amazing, and it's because there's all this mystery stuff going on, but that mystery stuff is really only there to facilitate like really deep character studies. In every episode, like we're seeing how they're handling stuff, and then we get the flashback to see like why they are reacting the way they're reacting to a thing, and which is why I think I personally would like to see this restructured a little bit. Like I'd love to, like, as an editing exercise, recut this a little bit to get some of these flashbacks like during some of the earlier episodes, right? Like a lot of the stuff could have happened during an episode, and then we get a flashback sequence. Like we do a close up of Wanda's eye, and then we hear and then we see the flashback, So one more flashback sequence after the snap, and she's gotten back. Endgame is over. Thanos is deaded, dusted, and she goes to get Vision's body. We find out, and I'm so happy that they explained this, because this was one of the things that was like really annoying me, is that why would she steal Vision's body? Because she seemed to have accepted that he was dead. And she went there not to like steal him to like revive him. She went to go bury her man. Like, she wants to bury her partner. And Hayward lets her in. Well, she lets herself in, even though he was like, "Oh, I gotta open the door." She's like, "Nah,
don't worry, I got."
That was a great moment.
Yeah. And she goes in. Hayward's like, "Oh, it sounds like he was actually trying to decommission him, but obviously he's lying, as we see from the end." But at this point, I'm like, "Oh, he was actually trying to decommission. That's interesting." And shows her Vision's body and says like, "Well, it was never, it." He keeps referring to Vision as it.
Yeah.
Not he, or perhaps they. I feel like Vision is male presenting, so he, him pronouns I think would be appropriate for Vision. But he doesn't refer to Vision as any of those things. He refers to Vision as it, dehumanizing him, and
the synthezoid.
Yeah, and she breaks in, but not to steal him, just to like see if any part of him is still there. She can't feel him. She leaves. We'll stop there and just talk about that sequence. Thomas, what did you think about that sequence?
I really liked it. It really sort of kept me on my toes, emotionally and narratively. Yeah, I like that. Like for a while, even we as an audience like couldn't tell what was going on, and it wasn't until we get that really cool aerial shot of the lab, where we see Vision in his, essentially 6 constituent parts: head, chest, arms, and torso, and legs. And they're doing something to him. I was actively confused as to what they were doing. Even though he said they were trying to decommission him, I was like, it doesn't look like that's what, I mean, I can tell you're pulling him apart, but it doesn't look like you're pulling him apart to pull him apart. Also, like, Vision was built by the most advanced AI to ever live, until Vision. So there's no way you chuckleheads with metal grinders are going to be able to get the vibranium out or like do anything with this, to like, even if they were trying to recycle it. Like, there's no way. Like, Ultron built this thing with technology beyond your understanding.
When I saw them with the Dremel, I was like, "Is that like a vibranium tipped Dremel?"
There's no point because he is made of like 70% vibranium. You are screwed. It had to be vibranium tip. Maybe that's what T'Challa did after his UN announcement. He was like, "We now give you Dremels with vibranium tips." Those are the two things we're going to give you. Nothing more. But yeah, it was a very tender moment. The "I can't feel you" is that lovely callback to that line in Infinity War. Yeah, and then her car is of course Scarlet, and I was like, must we Power Ranger this? Is that necessary?
Yeah, I loved it. Like in comic book universes, if your costume is a certain color, everything in your life is that color. Everything is.
I was like, it's only red car, guys. Come on, just put her in a Prius. Also, she's Scarlet Witch. Why does she have a car? She can fly.
Right. Eric, any thoughts on that sequence?
Oh, I think this one was my favorite of the flashback sequences, just because it was just so emotionally raw. Just watching her reaction to the love of her life being dissected, on these operating tables before her. Like, as you said, it was very dehumanizing. He never called Vision him. He just saying it and the weapon and whatnot. And like, just to see the anguish on Wanda's face was just very powerful, I thought. And also,
he didn't warm her up for it. He's like, "Oh, come here, take a look at this. Bah, here's your dead husband."
Right.
And he says, like, "What the hell, dude?"
Yeah, and like I mean, Hayward was clearly lying. He was not trying to decommission him. They were trying to vivisect him and study what was inside so they can replicate it. That's clearly what was going on in my mind.
Right. It didn't ring true. It felt a little bit unreliable narrator in the moment, but and we get the answer to it by the post-credit sequence.
Well, we've kind of known that since Darcy discovered Project Cataract, and we know that he was tracking Vision.
Yeah.
Like, we have the clues to know that in that moment, Hayward was lying. What I also thought was interesting is when she was like probing his brain. There were parts of him that were lit up. There's a probably like a medium long shot where there are bits of his wiring that are lit up as she's probing him. And I think that was our indication of the post-credit scene that like Wanda is necessary for Vision to come back in some form.
Yeah.
So the second half of this flashback is after she leaves. We see her Power Ranger color-coded car. There's a letter there's a lingering shot on a letter or something that's been opened. Right. And then she leaves. She goes to Westview, New Jersey. We see what's his name? Phil? With the bushy walrus mustache.
Yeah, we haven't seen in a while, and I'm very mad about that. He's the funniest guy in the first 3 episodes.
I wanted like every episode to just have one scene with him where he said something funny. Yeah.
Right. Just but what we see is a town past its prime. We see like
it's super sad
in America, which is interesting. And that's a whole other commentary, but it's so interesting, and we see a lot of the characters that we will then, or the people who become the characters that we see in WandaVision.
Yeah, we also see Deborah Jo Rupp. We see a couple of people that I don't think I've noticed in the show before. Like, I want to go back and look at all those people that we see.
I think they were all like people we have directly interacted with in the show. Like Herb walks across the street.
Yeah,
it wasn't Herb though, was it?
Wasn't?
I thought it was supposed to be Herb.
I don't think that was Herb.
And defeated.
Well, whoever it was, he looked familiar because I feel like we've seen him in another episode.
I definitely thought Herb was like the only black guy we've seen.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like he is, but like when I saw that dude, I was like, "That's not Herb." Like that's like the first thing that I thought.
Too, but I was like, unfortunately, there aren't a lot of characters in this show, and if there's a black guy walking across the street in Westview, it should be Herb. Like narratively,
right.
We do see our delivery guy who is a Postmates guy. Everybody, the internet was kind of speculating that was Mephisto, and
it says Presto on his shirt. That means magic.
Well, the Presto thing, I think that was leaning towards it being Agatha's son, who is another wizard within the MCU. But I still think that's the rabbit. I still think that's Senor Scratchy. Because his name is like Simon Scratch or something.
Right.
Something like that.
Nicholas Scratch.
Nicholas Scratch.
Nicholas Scratch. Yeah. It's so she's driving through, and I thought that the visual language reminded me of like the version of the world we saw post first snap, right?
Yeah.
Like just washed out sadness, like just very muted tones. She's driving around, and we're like, why is she here?
Exactly.
Yeah, I was wondering the same thing.
Right.
Why?
I'm trying to figure it out, and then God, like they just like keep like just digging that knife deeper into your heart this whole episode, because then just like here's this like unfinished like foundation of a house, and then she opens up the letter, and it's a property deed with a heart on it, and it says for us to grow old in V. And then you realize, Vision bought a property that he was going to build a house for her and give her happily ever after. And hopefully 5 years ago, this was a much nicer neighborhood, because if so, then we got to talk about finding.
I think it was probably more than like, I'm sure the world looks a lot different than it did 5 years ago.
Right.
And when half of a small town disappears, can you imagine how the infrastructure would just absolutely bottom out like the world did? But I mean, can you imagine a town where like, I don't know, your police force is what, like 10 people and they're gone. Fire, medical rescue, half the restaurants are closed. Like you got,
Yeah.
A town where everybody knows everybody and everybody's grieving, And, now, so I think somewhere that heart and the letter also correspond to the date that was circled in the first episode, and that has continued to be circled in several other episodes.
Yes, we've seen that heart, that version of that heart in a couple different episodes, I believe. Like
right. And I think it's either corresponding to like that's the day that she went there, or it's the day that the deed was purchased. I didn't specifically look it up, but that's a thread.
Yeah.
Also,
I have to on the calendar, and then the one episode where they have the dinner with the boss. I had forgotten about that.
I also have to double check, but I'm pretty sure the address on the property deed was the address from the Brady Bunch. It was like Sherwood Drive, and I was just like, I'm pretty sure that's the Brady Bunch address.
It was Sherwood.
Yeah. Which I thought was hilarious, because the Brady Bunch was created by Sherwood Schwartz. So, a little not tip of the cap there. And then this is when she just breaks, and she's just like, I can't do this. And I've been this entire time like, okay, I thought she accepted it, but after being forced to see the love of her life vivisected in front of her, and then finding out, I would assume that she found out after the fact that Vision had done this, like found this letter that was to be opened. She probably just opened it and was like so pissed off, and then went to go, okay, well, I just at least need to bury my partner. Can't even do that. Goes to look at the house, and she's just like, my life is just shit. And she snaps, and that's when it's like the sheer power of her grief, just this hex explodes from her. She creates the house,
reality,
right, and warps reality, creates the house, and then the hex just emanates from that. And now we know we've gotten a lot of answers out of this episode for sure. Let's see who we go to first. Eric, what did you think of this sequence?
Oh, like you were saying, like it was just heart-wrenching to watch this, just because this is the moment where she completely loses it, and her life has just entirely fallen apart. And so I thought that was extremely powerful and difficult to watch, especially with the revelation of the deed to the house. And we all kind of had assumed, just from previous information in the other episodes, that Wanda created the hex, but now we have actual confirmation and we see her doing it. So that was good to get that answer. I thought, though, the most intriguing part of this entire flashback to me was the fact that she did not steal Vision's body, as we had been led to believe in previous episodes. Like, I was trying to figure that out. I was like, wait, what? Is she going to go back there later? And well, we haven't gotten to the scene yet, but as we see, that's
we're right there actually.
Yeah,
so let's talk about it. So
yeah, like
one of the last things we see is like this gold energy coming out of her purple energy, literally,
it's coming out of her chest.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like normally her power emanates, like we see it in her eyes and in her hands, and in this moment it's also coming out of the center of her chest. So it is,
and her power is usually presented as a scarlet color appropriately, but this was the same purple we saw in the opening of the episode coming off of Agatha. So she's tapping into a power she doesn't normally use, it seemed like.
Yeah, that was wild.
I'm looking at it again because I don't remember the hue. I remember seeing red. I don't remember seeing purple.
I thought there was some purple in there. I was like, because I remember thinking that in that moment, I was like, that looks like what Agatha did to the Coven.
Terrible, but that's why I'm watching the sequence now.
But that right, and coming from the chest, right, coming from like the heart.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's evocative of like the the center of her being is like the center of her grief is creating this being. And we know from what Darcy and has found out that he is actually made of vibranium, just like the actual body of Vision. Like she literally just created a Vision, which is insane amounts of power, right? And yeah, that sequence is friggin' phenomenal. Thomas, you got anything to add to that?
I think what was super interesting is that so she creates the house to begin with, of her grief. Like she lands, settles for a beat, and then there's a secondary explosion that goes and changes everything within the hex. Because at first she just builds the house within the world of 2023 Westview, New Jersey, and then the second one is the one that blasts it to 1950 New Jersey. So I thought that was interesting, and I'm looking at it, and it could just be a color thing with my eyes, but I'm not seeing purple. I'm just seeing hues of red, which like might give you purple, but I'm just seeing like darker tendrils of red, just like more dense red than purple. But then when she creates Vision, all of the energy, as opposed to like some of it coming off her hands and some of it coming off of her chest, all of the energy like funnels through her chest and into Vision, which is then created out of like Mind Stone yellow light. You know what I mean? And as we know in comic books, a lot, color is always like crazy important for denoting like what kind of energy is being used at any one time. And so I think that's very, very cool. I think my my favorite sequence of the whole episode is this moment, like not just like flashback sequence, like the whole episode is this moment, because we just confirmed what we all knew. Anybody who read House of M is like, no, the Scarlet Witch is behind all of this. Whether or not she did it consciously is a story, but like nobody pulled her strings. It's her power, which is just dope.
There are no strings on me.
So it was really, I honestly, in the post-credit scene, I was just waiting for it to like him to turn on and James Spader's voice to come through his mouth and be like,
that would be if they like brought Ultron back, like if that Vision is like housing like whatever's left of Ultron, I would freak the F.
So on that note, though, in reference to that line you just quoted, did you guys notice that in a later scene when we see Agatha with the kids, they have what appear to be strings, almost like marionettes, holding them up?
She's got them like
is significant.
She's got them like leashed around the neck.
Well, yeah, she did, but I think
the imagery is a very evocative.
Their marionettes is maybe a hint that these kids are not as real as we have been led to believe.
I hope they are.
I've always been in that camp because that's House of M, is that they are not.
They were constructs.
They are constructs that if they go outside the hex, will do the same thing that Vision did and be pulled back. And now we kind of have we can speculate a little more solidly on why this Vision was not able to leave the Hex completely.
I have a theory about that. Because we mentioned the leashes on the kids. Let's finish that. Yeah, let's just, because that's the last scene. There's not very much left.
We just see the television audience version of the set.
That was cool. That was cool. Yeah.
So my question is, when they were doing, from like Wanda and Vision's perspective, when they were doing that first episode, if they looked like, were they seeing a studio audience?
I don't think so, because that would be the proverbial fourth wall. And while they were in the reality of the sitcom, they would not be aware of it. It might be there, but like,
it's like a perception filter.
I was about to say, like on Doctor Who, when like something is preventing you from actually noticing that something is there. That's what I was taking from that.
Hitchhikers, it's somebody else's problem field.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, but and so then Agatha's like, you did it. You did the whole thing. You did.
And that's when she names it, right? And she's like, oh, okay, so now I get it. Like, you are tapping into pure chaos magic. I thought that you were a myth. You are the Scarlet Witch. And that's like supposed to be the big, but obviously as comic book fans, we're like, yeah, we know. Like,
I think a lot of people, I think even if you were a pure MCU fan, you aren't going like, oh, now we've got, it's like you've heard enough people say Scarlet Witch to like know who we're talking about.
Right. But I will say this. She said, you are the Scarlet Witch. You are like a mantle, like you were saying, Eric, how they're doing in the comics now. That to me says, like, what you were saying, that this is some force, some entity that, is very rare that somebody gets imbued with the powers of the Scarlet Witch.
Right. Well, I think it might be more like less Phoenix Force and more Sorcerer Supreme.
Yeah, I didn't get the sense that it was a separate entity within her. I felt like in the Hydra flashback, we were seeing the previous Scarlet Witch imbuing or passing that power to Wanda. But I mean, we'll have to see what their take on this.
Right. Well, now that Maui brought it up, I'm wondering if Agatha's mother was the previous Scarlet Witch, because we had that imagery of the crown, and it just manifests in like whatever color your magics are. So hers was blue. Wanda's happens to be scarlet or
Could
red.
Be.
Possibly, but then I'm not sure she would say the Scarlet Witch. She would say you're a Scarlet Witch, because they would also then by that logic there would be blue witches.
But no, not if there. But not if there can be only one. Highlander rules.
Doctor Strange is the Sorcerer Supreme. There have been other Sorcerer Supremes.
Okay, I see what you mean.
He, in the moment, is the Sorcerer Supreme. He's not a Sorcerer Supreme. He is the Sorcerer Supreme, because right now there is one, and there can only be one, or there's never been more than one at a time, because it's such a rare thing to be able to unlock. Right. And the only reason Wanda can is because she was touched with the Mind Stone. We're talking a nuclear bomb mixed with a nuclear bomb.
Right. And then, so that's where the episode ends, and then we get a quick post-credit sequence where we see Hayward, and he has that drone that has been imbued with Wanda's powers, and he uses that and says, like, we've been trying to resurrect, trying to bring this.
Okay, but hold on. Before they go inside, his lieutenant is like, the team's ready, and I was like, oh shit, is this where we get like just a reveal of another sort of Marvel team? All of this, who's gonna be here? Is this, like, I truly don't think Fantastic Four showing up. But like, they could have done it right there. They could have done it.
I did think that for a split second. I
was like, what team?
It could have also been cool if like the U.S. agent that's going to be like the government's version of Captain America and Falcon the Winter Soldier makes an appearance, a little connective tissue there, something like that. But unfortunately, we don't get any reveal.
We got a reveal, all right.
But not any reveal of like
of a new character,
right? But what we do get is that they've used this power, this little bit of power they have from Scarlet Witch, to reanimate and bring back online the Vision's body, and he's all washed out and blue tone.
This was a costume that he used in the comics for a while, like the solid white, like barely any features.
One of my favorite
Vision.
TikTok. It was I listened to one of my favorite TikTokers talk about it, and it's a very similar sort of thing where the Vision was like killed and people are trying to bring him back, and he ends up coming back, but he's like evil, like truly like fights against the Avengers, and then they're able to like settle him down because they realized that he had been brainwashed by some other group, and he doesn't know his wife. And, this is when like Vision and Wanda are like actually married and stuff like that.
I believe so.
Okay, sure. That's the an interesting sequence there, setting the stage. I think we've seen all the chess pieces are out now, and the end game is about to start, right? In this last episode, like we are in the end game once again. So I think we're gonna see Vision versus Vision, Witch versus Witch, that's gonna be pretty cool. That was the episode. It's a really good episode. It's not my favorite, but it's a really good episode. We've
said it several times. The show is good. So when we have to say whether or not it's our favorite, it's not a 1 to 10. We're talking like between 8, 9. We're talking between 8, 9, and we got to find these little decimal points.
Yeah, this is why I hate coming up with the ratings, because like I've enjoyed every episode.
Yeah, every episode's great. Like, and I will say, like, in terms of consistency, like this has been a very consistent show. It feels very, very thought through. It's just wonderfully done. And I really hope that this is its only season, because I feel like it's telling a complete story.
Yeah, as far as we know, I think recently Kevin Feige made some sort of statement that there were not plans for a second season of WandaVision. And yeah, I think we're moving into I think the irony of WandaVision being released weekly episodically is interesting, because we're also moving into a new way of being able to tell stories, because we can do things when you have this overriding control and massive story groups where you can use the episodic version to tell something that's going to link to a movie, that's going to link back to a TV show. And this is something we've never seen in media before. Everything's been like nods or things like that, but this is one giant story. I know that they've said that you can see Multiverse of Madness without having watched WandaVision, but you've got. There's got to be something that you miss, or like, why did you make the show? Like, because it's going to tell a complete story, sure, but they've got to leave us on a cliffhanger. Like, there's got to be something that we're not going to know until the next time we see Wanda, which is in, as far as we know, Multiverse of Madness.
Right.
On that point, I would just like to say that I think this form of storytelling has been seen in media, but not in television or film. This is the way comic books are written.
I was literally about to say that, Eric. I love that you said
that. This is like they are really drawing heavily from the approach and like the format of their source material here, where like a story can be complete in itself, but then build to something else in a larger universe and connect to other characters. And we've seen that with the MCU films, but like in 2-hour blocks, never like in this longer format storytelling that we're getting with a TV show. So I think it is very comic book like.
Yes. Yeah. And I'm happy for it.
Yep. And then the movies are like the big events, right? Yeah. And like now we're watching an ongoing.
Series. Yeah.
Right. And then when the movie comes out, that's an event. Like that's an event, and it has tie-ins that you can.
That's Avengers versus X-Men. That's Spider-Verse. That's that's.
And what sucks is that when you think of multiverse, like for me as a comic books fan, when I think of the multiverse, I think of DC Comics, and now Marvel has beaten DC.
Oh, they have. Well,
I feel like they have.
Did you watch the Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover for the Arrowverse?
Yeah, I did. it was good. It was good, and they did it. But Marvel's doing it so much better and on so much larger of a scale.
See, and I know that we can say they're doing it better.
I mean, they've consistently outpaced DC in pretty much every metric of storytelling. So, like, now that they are tackling the multiverse, now that this entire phase is going to be all about the multiverse, and with what we have happening with Spider-Man, what we have happening with Doctor Strange, they are taking the only thing that I feel that distinguishes DC.
I think you're absolutely wrong. I don't think the multiverse with you, Thomas. DC. I think Marvel has already had that. I'm sorry, Secret Wars and the Ultimate Universe and the mainstream Marvel universe, that in the comics has been there for decades now. And when it comes
to has its own multiverse.
They do. But when you talk about like events of comics, like nothing's bigger than the Crisis on Infinite Earths.
I agree. But what I'm saying though is at this stage, we can't say that Marvel is doing it better than DC because we haven't seen what Marvel is doing. We've seen WandaVision, which has kind of lightly hinted at
It's our lead in.
But like
we've been burned with
what did you say, Maui?
It's our lead in. It's our lead into the multiverse.
It's our lead in. But like we don't know what's going to happen in the next Doctor Strange movie or the Spider-Man movie. So to say that they're doing this better than DC did with their massive television,
because they're taking their time.
They're taking
their time. They're taking their time, and they have way more resources. They have way better, people heading their ship. All signs point to they are going to blow the only thing that DC had left to hang its hat on out of the water, in my opinion.
Well, I love the opinion we have to see what they're going to do because Doctor Strange might suck. We don't know.
Yeah, I think because DC has never sold the rights to its tentpole characters, Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, like that they can still hang their hat. We just got the announcement of another Superman movie.
And we're going to talk about that before we log off. We're going to go a little bit long if y'all have time.
I do.
Okay.
But you know what I mean? I've read Infinite Earths, Crisis on Infinite Earths, and while it was good, I don't know if it beats out the way the Ultimate Universe and the main and 616 collided in Secret Wars. I just don't know.
No. It absolutely beats that.
It is.
Maui and I are big DC fans.
We're old. We're old, Eric.
It's not like I didn't read them. You know what I mean? I read them both relatively close to each other.
But did you have a history like reading everything that led up to it? Like, did you read old DC comics when they had the multiverse?
We're not talking about because then that's not the argument now. Because if that's the argument, then we're DC comics better than Marvel comics. We're talking about the big moments, and I just think that the way that Marvel handled that multiverse, it just made so much more sense to me. But I still think
what I'm saying,
it's just not going to do it with Snyder's Justice League.
Well, what I'm saying, Thomas, is that like in the situation you're describing, you have to have the background knowledge of the Ultimate Universe and what it had been to have it mean anything when it and the regular Marvel Universe collide. It's the same with Crisis on Infinite Earths. If you have the background knowledge of having read, the multiverse stories and seeing all these separate worlds and what the status quo was up to that point, the impact of Crisis on Infinite Earths is a lot more huge than just reading it as like a standalone story.
And that's why I say while Marvel has a multiverse as well, like DC for me is defined by the concept of the multiverse, like in a much more like profound way than Marvel. Marvel wasn't defined by multiverses the way DC was, the way it changed when the Flash meant the Flash, right? And how that created, because what it actually did was create this overly complex, like super convoluted thing. They're like, we got to clean this up. Let's do the biggest story ever to do that. Let's tell the greatest epic ever told. The Secret Wars, the Ultimate Universe was only around for a few years at that point, right? But for me, it doesn't hold the same narrative weight that 20 to 30 years prior to the 1980s of these various different Earths and like, you know, things that kept getting more and more complex into the 70s and into the early 80s, culminating in the Crisis in the mid 80s, was like the most insane event ever. Okay. Now, there's a difference between whether or not it's a better story narratively. And I will say Secret Wars had another 20, 30 years of advance in fiction, and as well as seeing how DC did the Crisis to build off of. Right, that's that thing that you love so much. I don't know that it would exist without it. So I don't know. You know, it's the same thing like comparing Jordan's Bulls versus Kobe's Lakers. Right, like it's two different eras of things. But this thing perhaps doesn't exist without the inspiration that the thing that came before it gave it.
That's entirely possible. I will say that for me, just as a person, like I do not take the legacy of not the legacy, maybe the longevity is a better word, of it into account. Like, I don't care that your multiverse has been around for 20 or 30 years before you did your big thing. I don't care that the Secret War or that the Ultimate Universe had only been around for 7. Like, I don't care how long you've had to tell your story. I care how good your story is, how interesting the consequences of it are. And I think I think my sticking point is that it felt that Infinite Earths to me, even just reading like a little bit before Infinite Earths and then the actual books itself, felt like you said a lot like, we gotta clean this up because it's getting too convoluted.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm living. But I understand what it might mean to other people. But I'm still in Eric's camp, Maui, that I don't think DC is defined by its multiverse. And I think
that's not what I was saying at all. No.
That's exactly what those words you said.
Sorry, no.
He's too early to tell whether or not Marvel is doing it better.
Doing it better because we haven't seen what Marvel has done yet. I feel like that's a big leap.
I agree with that.
It may be a leap. I don't know if it's a big leap because Marvel has done pretty much everything better. You know, just because they have a better behind the scenes thing, they are putting out consistently better product than DC is putting out, in my opinion. Now, that's my opinion. You may disagree with that, but just from what I'm seeing of WandaVision and how that is setting up the stage for the multiverse, to me, that is saying what I am seeing is Marvel doing it better. And I know I haven't seen a lot of it yet, and I know that there's more to unfold before my eyes, but they're taking their time. They are taking their time within the narrative. They are not rushing from A to Z, right?
They have the ability to.
Right, because they've done the work. They've done the work beforehand, whereas like DC is constantly like, oh my God, we just got to get something out. We got to do it. And so like that's how we went from Man of Steel to start to instantly Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice.
In the films, they rush it. I think the Arrowverse laid the groundwork over several years before they did the Crisis on Infinite Earths.
That's very true.
In the Arrowverse, for me, I am almost completely checked out of the Arrowverse at this point. It's been just each show has diminishing returns for me. Like they do a really great first season, second season is like, you know, with the exception for Legends, is like.
Yeah, for some I don't know how that happened, but Legends every time I get
Legends gets better. Like every time I watch it, I'm like, oh, they're just because they know what they are and they're just having fun. Whereas like the rest of them seem like they had a really great concept for the first season, and then they start to flounder, and they sometimes find something compelling, but it's really just doing we're just stuck in a loop over and over and over again. And it's for me. And by the time they got to Crisis, like I didn't even watch like the season before for most of those shows because I was already checked out. So, but I will say, and first, okay, let's pause on this talk and give our rating so we can wrap up this conversation and then go to talking about a couple pieces of news that I would love to talk about before we log off. So, Eric, what's your rating of this episode?
I hate ratings. Okay, well, as we were saying, this one narratively was not as compelling because it was a big info dump and we knew many of these pieces, and this was about connecting the dots, really. So I didn't like it quite as much as some of the previous ones. I would give it maybe like a what is our scale again? I'm sorry.
Out of five.
Out of 5. Yeah, I would give it maybe like a 4.6. I don't know, somewhere in there.
Okay. T-Squiz?
I'm gonna put it. I'm forgetting like what the numbers were for my other ones because I haven't gone back and watched our own reviews. Sorry. I'm gonna put it between episodes 3 and 4. Because I think for the most part it went like 1, 2, 3, 4 for me, and then 5, 6, 7 kind of maybe floated around in different orders. But I'm going to stick it in between 3 and 4 because this episode again it's the info dump, and it's just the Christmas Carol nature of it that I'm like, okay, we've done that before. That it's like a really easy way to do that. We could have done this in a more interesting. We could have told this same story in a more interesting way throughout the entire season.
I will say 3.9. Boom.
Oh.
While I love the emotional beats of this, something about the structure of it, I felt that a lot of this could have been peppered in throughout the series and instead give us more of points of Agatha so that I understand a little bit more about her going into the finale. I would have really liked a little bit more on her. That's just kind of my druthers, though I still think a very enjoyable episode of television and the longest episode we've had yet, I believe. So, boom, there you go. That's our review of WandaVision. And
we're not making that a thing.
That's a thing.
Yeah. Here's my final say on WandaVision. I don't think Agatha all along is the bop that the internet thinks it is.
Hot take for you folks.
Yeah, that's fair. For the one person watching it straight.
That's fair. So okay, I said I'm pretty much checked out on the Arrowverse, but I will say this.
Oh.
Superman and Lois.
Okay, I was going to ask if you had watched it.
Was freaking amazing.
I
absolutely loved it. They are using anamorphic cameras, so it has a very cinematic feel. It looks gorgeous. Pardon?
What's an anamorphic camera? I don't know what that means.
It's like a film grade camera as opposed to the TV grade cameras. It looks like it's shot like a film.
Amazing. It looks like a movie.
It's gorgeous. The structure of it was great. The cinematography was great. The direction was like tip top. Like the twins annoyed me a little bit here and there, but overall I even like them. It's just a wonderful like pilot episode. Now I will probably love the first season. But as I just said about the other Arrowverse shows, I will wait until the subsequent seasons to see if it actually has some legs. I'm really, really deeply hoping that we can see the DC extended universe turn it around and do something significant because it is my favorite comic book universe.
Same.
Because
Marvel.
And cinematically, it's the Marvel universe for me, right? Because Marvel's just doing the thing perfectly, like very, very few missteps, Age of Ultron here, Thor: The Dark World there, but overall, it's pretty damn good, unprecedented thing that we've lived through over the last 15 years of Marvel. It's pretty insane. So I just wanted to say that real quick about Superman and Lois. Eric, you saw Superman and Lois. Do you concur?
I concur, Dr. Jones. I thought it was very well done. Have you seen it, Thomas? I don't want to spoil anything if you're planning to watch it.
Feel free to chat as much as you'd like about it. I haven't seen it though. I only saw like the clip of his first landing and stuff like that. And now I liked the introduction of Superman into the Super Flareverse of Tomorrow Woman, as I like to call it. I'm sorry, the black Super Flareverse of Tomorrow Woman. In there after Crisis. Just call it like Super Squared or something now, because now we've got Superman and Lois. No. Okay, the black Super Flareverse of Tomorrow Woman and Lois.
I need that on a t-shirt.
Anyway,
it's on my list. I haven't gotten to it. I've been trying to watch Batwoman, and I just can't.
I'm still
Crisis and a few episodes after, and I was just like, I do not care, and I want to, but I don't.
So I am not at the point that Maui's at. I still really enjoy the Arrowverse and follow most of the shows. Batwoman is the one that's lost me, though. I've completely.
Well, it's the last one I caught up on earlier in quarantine. I caught up on all the ones that I hadn't been watching in Japan. You know, the seasons that had the like one less episode, so we didn't get a season finale for any of them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the most recent seasons or whatever.
Yeah. Well, anyhow, but getting back to what we were saying, I really enjoyed Superman Lois. Like, as you were saying, Maui, the use of the like film quality camera was making the show look incredibly cinematic and just a completely different look than any of the other Arrowverse shows. I thought it was very well done. I thought I mean, this was a version of Superman we haven't really seen in television or film yet. This is Superman with a family and we're trying to raise kids. We've seen this in the comics, but this was the first time it's been adapted, and I thought that was very interesting, and they did a great job with it. There are a couple things, you know, like I might have done a little differently. I was slightly disappointed by the direction they went with the kids, I think. Again, I don't know if I don't want to spoil things.
Let's not do spoilers. Let's just keep it at that.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, yeah, there was something I would have done a little differently in there. But overall, I thought it was a very strong first episode.
Yeah, it is awesome. So I just wanted to shout that out real quick. All right, back to the MCU. Spider-Man, No Way Home. Very excited.
I'm sorry, I believe you mean Spider-Man Phone Home.
I was hoping for Spider-Man Work from Home, and that, you know, it's like we can be topical for today's quarantine world.
So in the reveal video on the whiteboard, that was one of the options, and then under it said stop and then too soon or something like that. It was hilarious.
I see that.
Thank you. I have said to everybody, like, when we were doing theater in person again, if anyone makes a coronavirus joke, I'm just hitting them. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to see it. I want to forget that it happened, and I think that's okay.
Fair enough.
I agree.
But yes, No Way Home is interesting because, like, is this in reference to his identity being revealed at the end of the previous film, and that, like, he can't go back to the way things were? Is it going to be a more literal thing where he is in some other location and can't get home? Is it a little of both? I'm very intrigued to see where they go with it.
Yeah, I don't even have a leg to start speculating on, and I kind of like that. I kind of like that. I think one of my big issue with like current fandom is that we will take anything and like run with it into the ground. And I'm like, you know, or we could wait, like finish, and then just be presented with the story and speculate from the story, or the trailer. Like, it's not the 2000s anymore. We don't get the entire movie in the trailer. Go back and watch the first Spider-Man 2000 trailer. Like, you get the entire movie in the trailer. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Allow me to take that ball and speculate a bit. Okay.
So go right ahead.
Here's the thing. I was hoping you would have that rant right before I said this. Here's the thing. We know that there's a lot of rumors about people being cast in this.
Yes.
That's been in previous iterations of Spider-Man universes. And I believe it's been confirmed that Doctor Strange will make an appearance in the Spider-Man film. I don't know if it's confirmed or if that's just a very strong rumor. Also, one of the possible titles for this was Spider-Man Home Worlds, plural, on that whiteboard.
Well, oh, yeah.
And, you know, for everything I've heard, WandaVision, Multiverse of Madness, and the Spider-Man film are all connected together. And so if that's the case, I think No Way Home means that maybe he is falling through a multiverse type situation. Imagine, like, it would be cool to see that, like, them in his world, but imagine him going to the Sam Raimi Spider-Man universe and seeing like an older, grizzled Spider-Man. Like, how cool would that be?
Or like jumping to 2023 in
Sam Raimi's universe.
Yeah.
And now you got a Spider-Man in his 40s who is run down and just, you know.
And maybe we get a little what's her name? Mayday Parker. Because that's like a Mayday Parker.
See, speculating's fun. I mean, we might not get any of this.
Here's the one that got me. So we look at the board, right? And the logo is right in the middle. And then where because they were doing different names all over the board. And the
Keep going.
The name they eventually chose is down, like just slightly down to the left of the big logo. And it's got an arrow pointing to the big logo as if to say, like, this is the one we chose, make it big in the middle, right? Mm-hmm. If you look at the outline of the negative space around the negative space created by the big logo and all the tinier ideas around it, apparently it's the shape of Puerto Rico. Or like really close. Yes, I have seen this several places. It's the shape of Puerto Rico. That arrow, if you line up a map of Puerto Rico on top of this logo, points to the city that Miles Morales' mother is from.
What?
And I was like, no.
This is some crazy like conspiracy theory. Like we need a big board full of like strings.
That's what the board is. The board that they show us looks like a conspiracy theory board.
I know, but like it seems like there may be another layer to it that of someone else doing their own board just about that board.
So that speculation thing you were just talking about, Thomas, that's when it goes too far.
That's what I'm talking about. But there are so many people I've seen on the internet who are just like, yep. I'm like, what do you mean, yep? Like, that sounds mad, but I know you and I have worked in design before, and sometimes you do things intentionally, right? Mm-hmm. You don't just have a random brushstroke. Each brushstroke is intentional. And I go like, but did they really think about it that hard? Did they go like, we're gonna hint at Miles with the shape of Puerto Rico
in the most like obscure way possible?
Right. And I was like, now if it comes true, I'm the one who's gonna look like an ass.
No, if it comes true, it's and I hate this word, but it is a happenstance. Like it is a coincidence. Like it is not.
We know of.
There's no way that like, and if whoever did that thing comes out and says, yeah, that was a hint. Like I'm amazed you guys got that. Then that's the only time. That's the only way I will accept that was intended. Yeah. There's no way they were like, okay. Let's just do a suggestion of the of the birthplace of Miles' mom on the thing in the background. There's no, because who would do that?
Right. Obviously, a lot of people.
But here's my
went that way.
Spider-Man announcement. What happened to Black Widow? Where is Black Widow? Why are we not talking about Black Widow? We haven't gotten the Black Widow movie yet.
So Black Widow's supposed to come out in May, but I don't think it is going to come out in May because things aren't going to be open enough yet. And everybody that are sitting on summer dates are playing chicken, waiting for one of the other studios to be the first one to move one of their big tentpole movies off of the date. And once one does it, everyone else is going to do it. There's no way they're going to release it in theaters because it's too lucrative of a movie. You know, that's $1 billion they throw away if they
to Disney Plus or something.
Right.
Yeah, because as much as I love it, I'm still not paying for Premiere Access. That's not happening.
I mean, I will pay for Premiere Access for like I wouldn't for a remake of
Mulan. Yeah, I was gonna wait on that one.
You know, I waited for that one.
I watched it. I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna do it for a Marvel movie. Like I
will do it for a Marvel movie.
My house and watch it because guess what? The film is still sound mixed for a big speaker system. They still have not changed. Nobody in Hollywood has dealt with the issue that they don't remix movies for home theaters.
Mm-hmm.
They just release it as is. So that's why your dialogue is on. And then the explosions
are really loud.
Yeah,
I hate that.
It drives me insane. That's one of my most hated things. One more piece of news I want to touch on before we log off here because we're at an hour and a half right now.
Next week's going to be 2 hours.
Next week is going to be 2 hours, and I think we'll get a couple other people on, and we'll just have a big like finale free for all.
In our defense, wasn't this the longest episode of WandaVision?
Yes, it was.
So
yes, it was. But we've talked about a lot more than WandaVision tonight. So the last thing that I just saw today that actually made me tear up is that Warner Brothers is developing a new Superman film. Sounds like it might be a reboot. I'm not sure. And J.J. Abrams' production company, Bad Robot, is producing. That I don't care about. What I do care about is that they have attached Ta-Nehisi Coates to write a new Superman film, and I'm so excited. I love Ta-Nehisi Coates as a journalist, as a writer, as a comic book writer. Just across the board, he is just a fantastic writer. I am so excited about this news. Eric, what do you think about that news?
Well, I don't have the same reaction that you do because I have not read much of Ta-Nehisi Coates' work. But just I'm sort of in a wait and see kind of situation with this because I'm not a big fan of Man of Steel and that whole DC extended universe, the vibe that they went for, super grim, dark, and violent. That was not my DC, and I did not care for that vision. So, like, where they go with a possibly rebooted Superman, depending on the direction of it, I could be excited about, or I could just be rolling my eyes. Oh, it's another version of Superman. I don't know if I like this. You know, like there's not enough information for me to really make a decision at this point of what I feel about it.
T-Squiz, what do you think about this?
I'm in the same camp as Eric, even more so because I didn't even know who Ta-Nehisi. I can't remember the name now. I've never heard of them, so them being attached to the project meant nothing to me. J.J. Abrams being attached to it doesn't necessarily instill me with confidence. I did like him and his son's Spider-Man miniseries. I thought it was an interesting take on Spider-Man. So, you know, maybe I don't know how much he's going to have a hand in writing it, but just because his production company's attached to it doesn't mean that he has any say.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people freaking out about his production company being attached to it, like they announced that he's directing it. I'm like, those are two different things. Bad Robot has put out some incredible product, and they put out some bad product, like any other production company.
Like, this doesn't mean we're going to be getting a Krypton with lots of lens flares everywhere. Right.
If I see one lens flare, I'm walking out. You know, with DC, I'm kind of like, maybe they should just take a page out of their animated series and just be making these sort of like their animated films and be making these sort of like one-off films that are adaptations of notable comic arcs, as opposed to trying to compete with the dominating MCU. Because if you're gonna do what the MCU did, you gotta lay your groundwork. Like I don't think that the jump from Man of Steel to Batman versus Superman is what killed the DCEU. I think it's the jump from Man of Steel or from Batman versus Superman to Justice League.
Sorry, it's actually Batman v Superman : Dawn of Justice.
Extended edition, director's cut.
I don't know if I would agree with that, but okay.
I think it's the leap between those two films that I think that is what sunk it.
Yeah, I would have to disagree with that because BVS
was awful.
It's terrible, but also it's such a quick leap. It's Batman has been a Batman for 20 years, and we've not seen any of this Batman.
There was no groundwork laid, like you were saying.
Right, there's no groundwork.
It front-loaded a universe into one film, and it didn't work.
Right. Well, I don't know. I don't know if I don't like, because I'm also a big proponent now. Anything post like of Ultron, like any superhero movie, I don't care what comic thing, whatever. Post Ultron, I think we are done with the traditional origin film. Like, I don't need, especially if it's one of your tentpole, you know, or anywhere near one of your tentpole. I don't need you to give me an entire movie telling me the history of the beginnings of this character. So for Batman,
it depends. I wouldn't say that blanket statement, but for a lot of them, a lot of the ones we've already seen, some of the ones that they're going to introduce, I would like to see a Fantastic Four origin story. Me personally,
well, I don't think we need an entirely new one. I think we need a new take on it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't want to start with the Rocket going up. I don't want them to get their powers. They deal with their powers. They fight the bad guy. We're done. I want something more. I want to start the story in the middle, and then
that's fair for sure.
Right, but
to that point, what I would say though is that where Batman vs Superman failed, one of the ways it failed, in my opinion, was not they didn't need to do an origin, but like they were clearly setting up the fact that there was all this history, but we didn't see or experience any of it. So where it led the characters to had no meaning. Like we see one shot of a Robin costume that the Joker has clearly written over. We don't know what happened. It's implied that they killed him, but like we don't even know who Robin is in this universe. Like even just like a brief flashback within the film would have served the story better, I think, than just that one shot. It's like, oh look, the Joker killed Robin. We're going to rely on your previous knowledge of these characters from other media to make an emotional connection. Like,
and the only flashback they thought to give us was the freaking origin of Batman, which we've seen 800 times.
Yeah, exactly.
Like if I have to see those pearls one more time,
I agree that we don't need a new origin
in the building, like saving the kid during the Man of Steel fight. Like we get that flashback.
That's true, yeah. But I mean, I agree. We don't necessarily need a Batman origin because we've seen it plenty of times. But like,
what scene are you talking about?
It was in all the trailers. It's Ben Affleck like holding a little girl, like looking up at the sky during the Man of Steel fight.
I think that was in. Oh yeah. Okay.
In BVS. Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah. That's in BVS because that's the reason he thinks Superman is like a bad guy, and I was like.
Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, like I was saying though, like I don't feel like we need to see an origin of Batman again because at this point everybody knows who Batman is. But like if you're going to create a new universe, if you're trying to lay the groundwork for a new DC cinematic universe, as they were clearly trying to do, you got to give us something. You can't just say all this shit happened and like we're not going to tell you any of it, but you're supposed to connect with these characters anyway. Like, yeah, it just didn't work for me.
So you don't need to do the origin, but what you do need to do is you need to tell me who this person is, right? Like you don't need to give me their origin story, but you need to give me a story that tells me who they are, that tells me what they stand for and what they believe in. Don't like. If you're going to give me a murderous Batman that has thrown away his code, you have to show me why he's gotten to that point.
Exactly.
Right? Like I told you this, I've been telling you this since that movie came out, Eric. Like I don't necessarily care that you made him murderous because Batman is a person that's constantly on the edge. But because I know his code is so important, you have to actually show me what pushed him over the edge for me to accept this reality. Otherwise, I'm going to reject it. Because like you said, Eric, like all they did was like show us like obviously Joker did something to Robin, but we don't know what he did. We don't know who that Robin is. We don't know if we should have cared about that. Right? All I know is now that I have a crazy murder Bruce, and you have to show your work if you're going to give me that.
Yeah, there was
so far out of the characterization of him.
I agree. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I personally feel that Batman vs Superman was where that universe failed, just for a lot of reasons that just narratively just did not work and didn't connect with a lot of fans or critics. That's just my opinion, at least.
Yeah,
I know there's some people that love it.
Yeah, there's some people who love it. If you love it, if you can get enjoyment from it, that is awesome. I'm not knocking you for liking the movie. You know, plenty of people like it. I actually just rewatched Man of Steel last night. Actually, I still like that movie. You know, it's not necessarily my favorite interpretation of Superman, but it is gorgeously shot. It's just a beautiful thing. You know, it's like Lars von Trier made a Superman film, you know? So I love the cinematography in it and whatnot. I love Henry Cavill in it. I love a lot of the elements of it. You know, it just doesn't stick its landing. And I also think it gets the characterization of Superman backwards AF, right? Like Superman is, you know, the reason that he is so special is because he was raised by unremarkable people that like just imbued in him like this like beautiful sense of humanity, left unchecked with those powers, he very well could become that, horrible dictator, but it wasn't because of his nature. It was because of the nurture of these two sweet Kansas, heartland people. Whereas in this version of Man of Steel is like Kevin Costner, I don't know, man, you probably should let these people die. Like, I'm just saying.
I'm just saying.
If I were you, I wouldn't do that. And like that drives me insane because that's the opposite of who Jonathan Kent is always been portrayed as in every single anything I've seen of Superman. So there we go.
Well, we're like at an hour and 40 minutes, and we're way off topic from our original video.
No, but there was some big news dropped that I wanted to talk
folks.
about.
If anyone has watched the whole,
so
I mean, if in the future if they watch it, the video will be available.
So, to wrap up, Eric, people can find you on wherever books are faced, right?
Yep, on the Book of Faces, or as just Eric Lindbergh. Or
at him at Reflect Media. I'm sure he'll see it. Yeah. Thomas, people can find you.
T-Squiz42 on the Instagrams and the tweets. And check out on Facebook, Zooming the Movies, this Monday and Tuesday. Maui and Eric and myself will all be part of a reading of The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, the extended edition. It's our third Lord of the Rings film. We did them a little out of order. It's fine. But we're gonna have some fun.
3, 1, 2.
Which,
Chicago.
Yeah. Which real quickly, that's my order. That's my personal order. Of how I like them.
Don't start. We'll get into the conversation.
This is my moment to plug, so I took it. Check it out there. We'll be live in Zooming the Movies on Monday and Tuesday night. 2 parts. You got to tune in both nights to catch the whole movie.
I like it.
2 towers, 2 parts.
2 towers.
You can find me at Maui Thoughts on Twitter or Mr. Maui Jones on Instagram and at all the Reflect Media handles. And 1, 2, 3.
Okay. What about you, Eric? And then I think
for Lord of the Rings,
just real quick.
1, 3, 2 would be my preference.
Right. I'm torn between because like 2 and 3 are so tight for me. I was just like, is it 1, 2, 3 or is it 1, 3, 2? I could be convinced, but anyway, that's for another night. Bye, everybody.